project that we worked on with a group in Chicago called MacArthur Foundation. They actually had set up Hive in New York first. And they have a philosophy very much like mine and ours, which really is about, in the digital age, how do you get that making and learning to be the mainstream of education? And how do you empower teachers to be innovative using that kind of way of teaching? And their theory at the time was, if you find teachers who want to teach like that, and connect them with each other in a city, because in a city they're close, they're connected to each other, they can travel just on transit, whatever. One way to get people teaching that way is just focus on a city, get them working together, and get them to do new and innovative things together. So that was the original idea for Hive like 5 or 6 years ago. And we came in sort of afterwards and said, well, we're excited about that. Also, it's a good way to really focus on web literacy as well. So that's some important history, because it's an idea that evolved from both of those places. And I just kind of want to, as it's evolved, we refined the description of it, and we got, I think, to some clear ideas this year. And I want to walk you guys through them a little bit, and see if they make sense. Maybe they do make sense in the US and not in India, but just to share that thinking, because it's changing over time. And I almost want to show the last slide first, but bear with me because I won't. So what happened was, we've been very successful with these hives in New York and Chicago and a couple of other places. And there was sorry, I'm walking in front of the thing. A year ago, a push to say, what does it take, maybe 18 months ago, to go global? And you guys are already an example of part of the answer, right? You share the idea and people will run with it. So, what we thought is we really also need to clarify it. And so here's just some definitions that we came up with. So the one thing is, like, what is a hive? Like, if there's a thing, a noun, a place that's a hive, what is it? And the thing that we came to is, it's a network of local educators. They can be mentors, they can be techies, they can be real teachers, they can be librarians. Like, you guys all qualify that. But it's those local people who are trying to teach this way, and who are trying to teach or advance web literacy, and trying to do it in that maker style of teaching. So it's the local network of people who want to do that, and they're doing those two things, advancing web literacy and the maker style of learning. So that's our definition of what is a hive that we came up with. And then a global hive, or I would think be the same definition for Hive India, but at a smaller level, is what is that bigger thing? And that's basically the constellation or networks of every city that has a hive. So every city that has a group of educators, that falls into Hive India or Global Hive, however we think about it. So it's an umbrella that helps cities be good, gives them materials, that. And so we actually have sort of now hired somebody to be Global Hive. If you haven't seen it, I know some people have, there's a Hive cookbook that talks about how you get going in a city, all of those kind of things. And I think Hive India could function as a subset or as a support system or an element of that Global Hive. But the Global Hive has really helped those cities happen. I think that you're seeing that in Hive India also. So then, why is web literacy a part of it? And this one, I took out a huge number of slides from this main deck, and this one you guys already know. But why this in here is when you actually go talk to regular educators who we're often bringing into Hives, they ask this question. So why do I care about web literacy? And the thing that matters to a lot of them, because a lot of teachers or out-of-school youth workers are motivated by social issues and like youth development, is to say web literacy is not important just because you care about the web. It's probably why we're here. But it's also critical because you can't learn well and you can't do this maker-style learning if you don't have web literacy. So web literacy itself is a part of transforming the culture of learning, which may not motivate you, or maybe does, but definitely motivates kind of progressive teachers. And then the other piece is that if you're going to be a citizen, if you're going to be successful in the world, so again, teachers care about their students becoming citizens or becoming successful in the world, you need web literacy. So that's a little bit of the sales pitch we use about Hive to bring teachers, regular, more traditional teachers, into the club. So that's why I put that there. And then the question is, what happens in a hive, or what do local hives do? What do those networks of teachers do? And I'll get to this later because we came up with some metrics now that we're going to start use to measure hives against. But the two things really that we imagine happening in those hives, or that those local hive networks do, is the educators are learning from each other. So like you guys might be teaching a school teacher or a librarian about web literacy. They might be teaching you about how to work with young people. And that's really the model, is that you've got people with a common mission. They might bring different skills, but the same motivation. And they come together and help each other become better. And the other part is that in that they invent new tools. They do new teaching kits. They adapt the different makes. They find ways to use the MakerBot, with Thimble, all of those kind of things. And I guess that's an important part of it, is Hive really is meant to be the broader spirit of web literacy and openness. So all the hives include people doing all the stuff you guys have got, right? Not just WebMaker, but video, storytelling, MakerBots, science curriculum in the park with digital data collection, digital art, all of the whole breadth of things. And I won't go through a case study. Well, I'll stop now and just say, in New York, which is the most developed, you have everything from very big institutions, traditional kind of youth programs, like if anybody's ever been to New York, or you may have heard, there's a big science museum on Central Park called the American Museum of Natural History. So they just teach kids science, but they do it in an open source way. They use phones, do data collection, that kind of stuff, all the way to like tiny little groups in the poor neighborhoods of the Bronx, teaching like art and hip hop, but using open source techniques, using WebMaker. So it's very, very broad, just like you guys had very broad, the kind of groups who are in here. And then what do those people do in addition to how they're together? So what does a hive do? But then also, what are the people doing beyond teaching each other and inventing things? The key that we've had in North America may be different in India, because I don't think we've seen it work yet, is to take what they're doing together into traditional institutions of learning. So not just schools, but anywhere there's learning happening, that they're bringing those ideas in. They're not having to set up a new school. They're working with teachers who can bring things like WebMaker program into their school, into their library, into their museum, those things. Maybe that works or doesn't work here. I think that's a thing to experiment with. But that's a lot of the philosophy there. And then why Global Hive, or why Hive India, is to spread this idea and start new cities. And then this is where I want to pause and talk. So this piece is assuming all this stuff so far makes sense, and we can go back and question it. The question that we've been asking ourselves, and that you guys maybe unknowingly are a part of the experiment, is how do we grow this model? And we really, as I said, about 18 months ago, talked about that. So the idea that we came up with is there's actually a developmental model. You don't have naturally a New York style hive, which is about, has 3 paid staff, has about 60 institutional partners, has about 300-400 teachers in it. You don't have that like in one day. And so the idea is that maybe for some cities, the idea of that full-fledged thing, which we call a hive network, is the end of the road, and you do find money for staff or community organizers. In New York, there's also money to give grants out to some of the partners to do new curriculum. They're meeting all the time. They're doing programming in their own places all the time. They're doing pop-ups, like they're going to be at the New York World Maker Fair next week, and they're doing a huge 2-day-long hive pop-up. So maybe you get to that point, but you don't start there. And so the idea is where you start is like yesterday, or even a smaller thing than yesterday. So the idea was these hive pop-up events is people are interested in doing this kind of stuff. They see around, there's like Maker Asylum, there's the robot guys, we see partners around, we see Mozilla, maybe we see some teachers. Let's try it out and see if it feels good, see if it's interesting to people. So we originally called it Hive Pop-Ups. It's basically a maker party, but with the idea of that broad umbrella of partners, and with the idea that you want to, see about this kind of teaching and learning. And you could just stay here in a city and try it a bunch of times, do it once a year. Maybe that's all. But the idea is that some people are going to want to do something more than that. And so what we've seen, and I think, anyways, what we've seen is people start to do what we call hive communities. They don't yet have staff or resources or a permanent thing, but they want to do something more than an event. They want to meet in between events. They want to bring stuff into schools or into other places on a kind of more ongoing basis. Maybe they want to set up clubs like that, whatnot. And so it says here it's a proto-network where educators run events and work together regularly, and it doesn't necessarily have funding. And so I think, I was talking to Vanila and Sarak before, in some ways, India is kind of here. It's getting to the point where the hive idea is grabbing itself. You see amongst yourselves some kind of leadership. But as I also said, I think India sits up here more like Hive Global. It's not the local network. It's trying to get this going. And it feels like, but you guys can say something different, most of the city levels of Hive are kind of still here. We're still trying it on, and maybe they don't want to go over here, or maybe they do. But I think it would, it's interesting to ask, is there enough traction for this Hive idea that you start to ask the question, what does it look like to really say, okay, we have Hive Pune, and here's the 3 or 4 people who are kind of leading the way, and here's the 3 or 4 partners locally who are a part of it. And it doesn't mean that the national partners can't also be in it, but I think building up local partnerships and bringing local teachers is very important. So that maybe come back and talk about that in the context of India in a second. But just to finish, if we think about those networks, they're funded, they have staff, they're established, whatever. Basically, actually, this is more than that now. You have New York, Toronto, Chicago, and then that's actually 2 in there, Kansas City and Chattanooga. So those are the ones that have staff that have been going for a while. But if you look at places that have communities or have something more than have just had events, you're starting to see more. I mean, you have, depending how you count it, like 4 or 5 cities in India, but you definitely have India on the map. And I think India it's underrepresented on here because it's probably farther ahead in development other than maybe San Francisco and Vancouver, which are also quite strong. You see interest in Indonesia, a little bit more in the city level, just in Surabaya, not so much as a national idea. A little bit of interest in Brazil and Uganda. I think not anywhere close to what's happening in India yet. I feel like I'm screwing one up on there. But anyways, the idea was really to have 5, I think I said in the previous slides. What did we say? 7 cities here by the end of the year. So I think that will actually be Toronto, New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh. That was the other one that I missed on there. Chattanooga, Nashville, or Kansas City, and San Francisco. I think we'll have funded people be more full-fledged networks probably near the end of the year. Maybe that's San Francisco. And have 10 like this, of which we're counting India as 1, but maybe we should be counting India as 5, or as 2, or maybe one city really wants to push itself into this level this year. But that's, I think we're close to getting that, and depending what we do in India, maybe it's a bigger number. And then to have 20 where things have already been tried out, which India probably already makes up half of that number anyway. So that was sort of early this year as we were trying to get crisper on this model, a little bit of the goals we set ourselves. And I just wanted to throw it out to you guys as, does the thinking make sense? Does it not work here? Like, as the city representatives, is the idea of getting a little bit more permanent about having some local hive leadership, getting us to help you bring in more local partners, interesting, too much work, all of those kind of questions. So that's, I'll shut up now and go into like suggestions Q&A, but I just, talking to Sarak and Vanila, thought maybe helpful to give this frame, because it's a bit bigger version of it than maybe sometimes we're talking about. Q&A. Sir.
So I have a question regarding partnership. Partner. So a question that probably partners have in their mind is like, what are they getting back from Hive?
Yep.
So what's like a good answer to that? What is Hive giving back to them?
Yep.
And how
I'm going
are
to
they?
ask the partner. But I have a good answer, but I'm interested from you guys if what's your motivation for this, or what do you think of Mozilla and Hive as bringing to the table that's useful for you?
What I have realized in these three maker parties or Hive events is, first of all, we get to meet a lot of new people. Not only Mozilla, but other people, what they want, what they are doing, what different are they doing, and what they are expecting. The second thing is we're spreading the word. So somewhere we are going to get back. Not in a monetary way, maybe, but there is always a way out that you will get back in return. So yeah, that is a big motivation for us, which drives us to such events.
Yeah, that's helpful. I see if either you guys have anything else to say.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. We don't come here for expecting some monetary benefits or something. We come here because we love doing the research. So we keep doing it as long as you guys keep reminding us.
In the same way, word of mouth works. Monetary expectations are zero. It's all about creating awareness, and as much as people can know more about stuff, what we guys or anyone else has been inventing or trying to try new stuff.
Yeah, awesome. And so I think that's one motivation, especially of those kind of partners who are doing different technologies or different programs or whatever. And one thing, I can't remember your name, the first guy in the orange who said, one thing Puneet said is a little bit like you're getting feedback from people as you're meeting new people as well. And I didn't say that, but for me, if it's working well, one of the best things about Hive in relationship to partners and in relationship to Mozilla is it's basically a research laboratory. So if you can build up very good networks of teachers, whether that's you guys or more traditional teachers, if you can build a way to then get feedback back about when they're showing those robots or they're showing WebMaker, what are they seeing from students, that's worth gold, right? Anybody who's developing those kind of products, if you could do those feedback channels. So one of the things we try to work in New York in particular around is like, how do we formalize that feedback process? If you did an event like yesterday, how do you, even if you guys weren't there, but somebody in Calcutta was demoing your stuff, is there a way for feedback to come back from those teachers? And so that's another very tangible thing if we can get good at it. That's valuable to partners is a laboratory for their stuff, not just a marketing or awareness channel for their stuff. And that's very valuable. And then I think there's a different kind of partners, which is, if you can find them, teachers, museums, libraries, people who work with youth. For them, they're looking for interesting new stuff to do. And so, like the people who are developing a little bit of the WebMaker and Hive marketing plan have like a bit of a hierarchy of like market segmentation of who to go after, and it's like everybody who's a teacher, teachers who are interested in web literacy, teachers who are interested in web literacy or digital or whatever, and are totally bored and angry with their job. And so there is a piece actually that when you go through that, most people are teachers or working with youth or doing youth programming because they care about young people. And like large numbers of them are creative, soulful individuals just like us, and large numbers of them are frustrated. And they're looking for, partly they might be frustrated because they can't choose to do something new, but if they're in a private school, if they're in an out-of-school program, if they're in a museum, they probably have the freedom to say, oh, I can do something different. And if we can offer them something different to do, connect them into something like Mozilla, give them badges and certifications saying they're good at this, like that's actually a very good offer to that kind of partner, which is different than this kind of partner. Others? So I guess, maybe for Sayak and Vanil, but for everybody, like, do you have a feel for what do you think is the right path for Hive in India? Does it make sense to be trying to have some cities we're targeting to really develop more quickly?